And I watched people get stabbed over chess games.
Mm-hmm.
I watched people, get stabbed over basketball games. I mean, it's just all these different little things that, a guy who's known to never miss a basket misses a basket, so he gets stabbed.
Yeah.
It's crazy, things like that. But I have to say that, and when it comes to a lot of the different prison gang stuff, at least in the very early years when I first went in, there was a much more regimented, much more orderly things. You could tell who the main shot callers were. They sat highest up on the bleachers on the yard. They usually had people, you couldn't just go walk up and talk to them. You had to go through a certain protocol and stuff. But in general terms, you didn't have to worry about being stabbed. And the thing was, here's something people don't really understand. The gangs don't want to just kill everybody that disagrees with them. That's part of the reason why I think I did so well. They would have liked me to be a part of it because of my way I stood for myself. But there were a lot of guys that were in for murder that never had nothing to do with the gangs. Because they said, look, don't make me have to stand behind you with a knife and watch your back. Yeah, I might not like it. So there were guys along that line. You had then guys that, some of the serial killers, some of the mass killers, I hate to say it, but some of the gangs were a little leery about, were they really on their rocker? Were they not on their rocker? What would happen if things went wrong? So they didn't really want. So there was a lot of different little reasons why certain people were not really pushed in.
And this is tying in now. We're going to move into section 3 here from what you're saying, because this is tying nicely into it. We're going now into section 3, which is Jamie's going to respond. We're going to respond together to some of these comments, some of the critical ones in particular. All the people who've supported Jamie and sent their love, we really appreciate that. But, it's everybody's right to criticize and have critical thinking skills and post their objections. And it's Jamie's right to come in and do a second podcast and do rebuttals. So I said at the very beginning of the podcast, prison was extremely different when Jamie went in the early mid-80s to how it is now. So the keyboard warriors judging what happened to Jamie back then by the rules of today, you've got to roll back the clock 20, 30, 40 years to understand fully. One of the main things that people had an objection with, and it's the video that's gone the most viral, actually, people were most interested in, it was the almost 40 minute story of the shot caller putting a green light out on Jamie. And a lot of the comments said, who does this guy think he is? Rambo going in, kicking all these AB's asses. They would have shanked him to death in a heartbeat. But like Jamie was just explaining before I started to talk here, the culture was so different back then. And the shot caller that Jamie had an issue with, was it Wesley was his name?
Wesley Tucker.
Wesley. That guy was just one guy in a structure of the Aryan Brotherhood. This wasn't a hit put out by the main guys who'd founded the Aryan Brotherhood.
No.
And I think a lot of people misinterpreted that. If a hit had been put out by the main guys who founded the Aryan Brotherhood, Jamie wouldn't be talking to us here today. And that Wesley guy, he ended up getting issues with his own people.
He was killed.
And they ran him out, didn't they? Killed him.
Well, no, here's the thing. Like I said, I met Wayne Bulldog Ladd, one of the 4 original founding members of the AB, many, many years later. And he told me straight up, if I'd put a hit on you or you would have been killed. He goes, but the problem is even when I heard about you, you were not that big of a problem, because basically Wesley didn't really have the rights to try to be all, he was trying to up his, value, because but here's the thing about Wesley Tucker. Wesley Tucker, came out of Orange County, California and stuff. And his thing was, at some point in time, he realized he wasn't moving up and that he was losing a certain amount of respect within the group. Other people weren't no longer listening to him or doing what he wanted and stuff. And he started feeling fearful for his life. So what he ended up doing is he actually ended up going and contacting the feds and tell them, look, I have information about the Aryan Nation Church in Idaho, about some bank robberies they were involved in. I've got information about the ABs here in prison. I can give you all this. I want you to get me out of prison. I want you to give me a new identity, right? And because of the weight of his stuff, they decided. Now, the problem is that they decided that what they were going to do is that they contacted California Department of Corrections. We want him somewhat protected. They decided that rather than put him in one of the protective housing units, and that because they were trying to close those down at that time, that's where his biggest fault was. They brought him down to CMC and they put him on B yard. Now, B yard, most of the guys who had that kind of status were given single cells. Okay, so they didn't have cellies. There were less people. There were more guards to the inmates there to keep a better eye. And most of the guys in that yard would walk by themselves, so they would really stand out. If somebody walked up to them, the guards could see it quickly. So he gets put over there. I happened to accidentally bump into him because even though they're on that yard, they can still mingle with the other people on different yards in certain areas, like if they had gone to the hobby or gone to medical or something like that. I happen to be going into education. He sees me. He's coming out of education. I recognize him, but like I said, I didn't think anything about it because last time I saw him, I won. Next thing I know, I have the goon squad, the security units, jack me up talking about they're wanting to transfer me out because they're worried that he feels threatened by me. And I said, wait a minute. I haven't done anything wrong. Well, yeah, but he's doing. And so they kind of give me this rundown about, that they can't have anything happen to him. I told him, I don't care about him. Leave me alone. I told them that before. I don't want to care and stuff. So they had us do what they call a Barney chrono. And I don't know if you're familiar with Barney, the purple dinosaur. I love you, you love me, we'll all be the family. So the idea is that CDC would do the Barney chronos where it says, whatever problems you and I had in the past, they're gone. We're not going to have any problems in the future. We're just going to avoid each other. So we signed these things, me and him. Great. He's in B yard. I'm in A yard. No problem. Don't care. What ended up happening, though, is that word got back up to higher ups in other places. Shot came out of Pelican Bay. One of the top level shot callers sent word down. And they did the same thing as I explained to you. Other people have done. The Northern Mexicans have done stuff. They gave a couple of AB solids the right to rat out something in the group. Nothing major, a little drug deal, whatever. And the guy being ratted out knew he was to be ratted out. He became the Judas. Okay, I'm going to have the drugs. You tell on me. The guards will catch me with the drugs. Oh, I've been told on. Those are the rats. They get to debrief down. They get to go down to CMC. They were put on C yard, though. They didn't get put on B yard because they weren't fully debriefed, right? One day they see him in the clothing line. Man, you won't believe what happened. Woo, 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 woo. All this kind of thing, right? Okay. Somehow, on one of the days they were having bands played on different yards, these two guys got on that yard. Wesley came out to the yard to go to the little mini shack to buy an ice cream. And these two guys killed him. When they killed him, the federal case disappeared because there was no he had all the information. He wouldn't give them enough information to get the convictions they wanted until he had the guarantee. They would not give him the full guarantee until they had him actually in court. He was less than 2 weeks away from going into federal court to testify and stuff. And at that time, he'd get his deal. They got their deal. And he would have been released and given a new identity. So here's a guy who's an AB, low-level shot caller who ends up turning out that he has to be killed because he violated. So this is why I'm saying is that, even guys later that I found out that were like associate affiliate, yeah, man, if we'd known he was going to be like that, we wouldn't even have listened. But the thing was, again, my fights against the ABs were done in the smoker's ring, which was what they did so that they didn't kill people. They put you in there to fight. Now, granted, they wanted to beat me down. Granted, I had the upper hand just because I had an advantage they didn't know I had because they didn't know anything about me. They had no understanding. And the thing was, and here's another thing that people really don't understand about prison. Some of the great, big, buffed up guys in prison, though they are tough men, are only really tough if they can get their hands on you. Most of them are too slow to be able to fight. And that's why a lot of little guys get up inside them and I've seen a lot of big men get knocked down. So most big guys aren't getting caught in that trek anyway. They'll just use their imposing side to kind of be there to be impressive. The ones you had to really worry about were the little dope fiend guys that were just looking for a hit, looking for that next fix, and but the problem is they're not the most reliable hitters. One, they don't really know how to stab a lot of people, and two, they usually draw so much attention that either they get caught ahead of time or the guy they're going to stab up has a chance to defend himself. Again, the few that came at me off were that kind of guys. So, and the thing is also is that with the AB or the brand, they usually didn't send their best, guard type people who might be, who've done the stabbings early on and moved up. They're not going to send them down to somebody because, like I said, the biggest thing with me was they got tired of the fact that there were enough other real targets they could deal with. And they were also having problems. It's that there was suddenly a big influx of white Crips, white guys joining black gangs. Now they really are upset about that because, well, now you're race trading and stuff like that. Those are much bigger targets than me. My only reason to be a target to begin was I didn't want to join. I mean, I had nothing against them. I just didn't want to be a part of their thing. So
yeah. So that's answering that. I think you've explained that very well. Now,